Ladies and
Okay.
gentlemen, boys and girls, I have the pleasure of having with me today the talented director and producer of this great new film called Dig from Saban Films, Asher Levin. Asher, how you doing, bud?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh man, I'm really excited to talk about this
Oh,
about this picture, man. You have a super talented cast. Can you talk a little bit about this film, which is about a widowed father and his daughter who is hard of hearing that have to go through a very traumatic experience because two hillbillies decide to go into business for themselves?
that's one way of putting it.
Yeah, I
Mm,
think it's a good way to put it. Yeah,
yeah, the movie. I like to say the movie is about a trauma that breaks apart a father and daughter, and then a trauma that brings them back together.
I like that.
So it's a little bit of a unconventional father-daughter families drama. But in the middle of that, there's the pipe bomb of Emile Hirsch and Liana Liberato's characters, who are sort of fun-loving criminals. I guess it would be the best way to put it.
You know what? That's
So
not a bad
yeah,
way to put that at all.
yeah. So the project came to me in the script. We did some work on the script and got it to a really nice place. I we Thomas Jane I had just worked with on another film right before, and so we got Thomas and Harlow on, my producing partner Daniel Cummings, who I've done several projects with. Oh, sorry, my dog is being kind of crazy. Everyone wants to be loud right now. Um, he was working on this already and kind of shared it to Thomas and Harlow, his daughter, and then said, "Hey, while I was editing Slayers, which is another film that's coming out next month, vampire film." He's like, "Hey, doing the other one with Thomas, and maybe it'd be cool for you to jump onto this right now while you're finishing the movie." And so uh, Saban was already sort of on board, as was Screen Media on the international side, and we were looking for our other sort of our guy to go opposite Thomas. And I knew Emil from around town, and always thought he was such an excellent actor. And when I read the script, I thought it would be so fun to pair Thomas with Emil because they're very different kind of actors. um, and uh, and so I had this Zoom with Emil pretty early on, and the character was a little different back then. Didn't have a girlfriend. Vic's character was an ex-cop, and his buddies were sort of with him to try to dig the body out. And he said, Thomas is really big and I'm not, and I don't know if I believe that I could overpower him as a cop. I just don't buy it. And so we started talking. And I said, well, maybe it'd be cool if you were more of like, something a little wilier and and something more unhinged. And he had mentioned that he really wanted to play Charles Manson, but did not get the role. By the way, this is a film snob over here, so I'm giving you some insight. I think he was like one of the main guys up in running for it, for both of those movies, for Charlie Says and for a Tarantino film that he was ultimately in. And and I said, well, maybe we can have this be like a cult leader, kind of almost like a botched job, like kind of like how the Manson crew, and we could have one of his main girls with him and stuff. And then from that it evolved, and I kind of was like, actually it'd be more fun to have it be that these guys are just sort of want to be gangsters. It's him and his girl, and they come from a gangster family and want to be gangsters. And so we kind of architected that whole side of the movie, which wasn't really there. The heart of the film was there. That really shocking opening was there. The hearing impaired element was there, which I think is so unique, and obviously timely. When we had done this, Coda hadn't come out yet, or just premiered at Sundance, but certainly wasn't there when we were writing it. And it wasn't that in vogue yet to have representation for hearing impaired. So having it in a movie, and then of course once we were in production, we made sure that we had supervisor, that Harlow did an incredible job training. Worked for weeks on learning sign language, and Thomas too. In his own grumpy way, kind of wow, why do I need so many hands and things? And can't we just do this? And why wouldn't you just be reading my lips? And I listen to actors a lot of times. So some of the stuff that's in there was really just Thomas and I talking about it, and him sort of reconciling how he thought his character would deal with his daughter and not want to deal with the fact that she has a hearing impaired issue after something that really is his fault. So that ending is so unique. I'm not spoiling anything, but that when he finally has this sort of moment where he's admitting what he's done and doing it by proxy of sign language, and he's finally communicating with her the way that she has asked him. And we realize that even though he has been unwilling throughout the movie to communicate with her, he's actually been studying the whole time. And so there's a really beautiful, poignant moment there.
I love that, and that's exactly what I was going to point out to you. Is I love that progression on the ASL throughout the movie. I thought that
Yeah,
that really built Thomas's character a lot, and it really helped him
100%.
out. And I think without that, the character doesn't have as great an arc from where we started, which is this tragedy, to where we ended, which is another different, very almost similar tragedy. I love the
Yeah.
way that you framed that. And was that in this? Was that in Banapal and Ben Hur's script originally, or did you guys work through that?
Most of the sign language stuff was there and the arc was there. I do think that performance wise, I come from a background of screenwriting when I was in my 20s. So in a way, I am much less precious with scripts, for better or worse, with the writers, than I would be if I had come from a filmmaking and directing standpoint, because I know as a screenwriter that things get rewritten all the time, and that changes usually make a project better, and that you need to listen to your actors. And because, as much as you have a fantasy in your head, unless you're James Cameron and your actors are like little figurines, or Wes Anderson. I worked with an actress who worked with Wes and said that he was really just very specific about where to put her hand and, like things like that. But I'm not that type of director. I worship at the altar of Scorsese and Tarantino, Soderbergh, Friedkin and Lumet and people like that. And
Michael
and they're
Mann.
all yeah, and they're all actors. Exactly, they're all actors, directors. So I think that they allow for performance to dictate some things sometimes. And the best way to do that is actually not when you're there. It's really before. So we do rehearsals. Before I even do rehearsals, I tend to do actor meetings where we go through the script and talk about things. Emil's a fantastic collaborator when it comes to screenplay because he's a writer himself. And Thomas is a director and obviously comic book writer and understands story. So they're both come at it a little bit differently, which was interesting in this film. Thomas is really always talking about the essence of scene, the sort of trajectory of character and structure, and Emil is preparing for performance is done through dialogue. So a lot of times it'll be, hey, I had this really good idea to change the dialogue to this, or I want to change that. And all he's really saying is, this is my process to create the character so that the character isn't just something that lives on the page. When I was 8 years old, I started going to Lee Strasberg Actor Studio. And I was an actor for a lot of my younger life, a theater actor. And then I took directing for actors when I was a Tisch at NYU. And it's always been a priority of mine. And as much as I appreciate the Michael Mann thing and the visual stuff is obviously ever present. I'm a stylist when it comes to directing. It really always comes back to performance before any of that, because I've done projects before where the acting was bad and nobody really talks about how good the movie looks. So you got to start there.
I like that, and that's true. Emil Hirsch, one of my favorite actors, actually, one of my favorite actors around, and I love that you worked with him. I wanted to ask you something because I live in the desert. I live in Las Vegas. Where did you shoot this movie? Because it's
We
very desert.
shot in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I shoot in New Mexico a lot. My producing partner Daniel lives out there. I love New Mexico. I was actually supposed to shoot my first film, which was 13 years ago. It didn't really come out that great, but the New Mexico version would have been much better. I think that there's something about the desert. I'm from LA, And the only places I've lived were LA and New York, or there's something about the desert that is glamorous to me in a different way. You know, I was in the rock band from 20 to 25. We toured a lot, and I loved going to a small town. I loved figuring out where the local bar was, and checking out the terrain, before I had to go to the arena or the stadium or whatever theater. And it's the same thing. I kind of feel like a gunslinger when you go out to those places. The vibes are different, and especially for this film, we lived it a lot. I think Thomas and I lived it a lot more than everybody else, and we lived it a lot. I mean, there was we shot most of this movie on a ranch. It was out, off of a frontage road, and a big expanse. This guy named Ross, who had it carried down from, I think, 3 generations, and they had a saloon on the ranch, which was fun. When nights got long, it was, and I think that there's, Thomas's company is called Renegade, him and his partner Courtney, and I definitely think that there's a renegade spirit that Thomas and I both share with regards to filmmaking and the filmmakers that we love, and the style. And so I think the desert is a place where renegades and gunslingers, cowboys, and reside. Because lets me go back to my rock and roll roots a little bit.
I love that because it's true. That's how it is out here. Literally, a lot of cowboys, a lot of Old West. I love that. I only have one other question before I get into my outro.
Sure.
It's a fun question, but it's also the hardest question of the day. If you could only watch 2 movies for the rest of your life, what 2 and why?
Well, that is a hard one, because it's not 2 favorite movies. It's the 2 movies that you could watch for the rest of your life. Okay. Because I usually say my 2 favorite movies are Goodfellas and Die Hard. Those are my 2 favorite, and they're kind of on both sides. But then there's a couple honorable mentions in there that might be more rewatchable all the time. It's like, I love National Lampoon's Vacation.
Oh yeah.
I think I would say that's probably a desert island movie. You could watch that movie like 1,000 times.
It's still fun.
It's so good. It honestly, it's probably, and it's also the most subversive comedy ever made, because it's a giant commercial family film that's R-rated and completely incorrect, right? Honestly, I even like the remake that Ed Helms had. I just thought it was pretty funny. Everybody hated on it. I thought there's some funny elements to it, but yeah, I mean, the original one, specifically the very original one, is great. I would say that, and then for sake of rewatchability, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to throw one that's not in this list because I'm such a big De Palma fan. I think that Mission Impossible is pretty incredibly rewatchable film. The first one. It's not my favorite movie, but De Palma is the best commercial action filmmaker ever, and all of his. I love all of his films. I am hugely influenced. I think he's probably my most influential director, him and Soderbergh. But that movie you could watch a gazillion times. There's so many good parts to it. The whole series is great, but that movie is something different. It's like the ultimate Hitchcock movie with $200 million. You know what I mean? Like,
totally, yeah. No, I totally get it. Because De Palma's got a film on my desert island list too. He's got The Untouchables. So.
Oh, by the way, that's another one. I've been watching it a lot recently because I'm working on a 1920s film right now with Emil. And so, yeah. So I've been watched it quite a bit because it's also just and not to geek out here, but I guess this is the place to do it. I think it's a movie that people forget about. You watch it and you're like, it is the thing that is so cool about it is he directs that movie like a thriller. It's not a gangster movie. It's not Scorsese, Coppola gangster movie at all. It is real because of his perspective is from the cops, the FBI, that there's tension because that Capone is dangerous, that these guys could die. And all of the set pieces in that movie and Mission Impossible the set pieces are insane. The Mountie set piece in the middle of Untouchables, when they're in Canada, is People always talk about the Battleship Potemkin thing, and obviously that's an incredibly iconic scene. And there's
Yeah.
a great backstory that he just came up with it on the day because they couldn't afford. You've heard the story, right?
Yeah.
They couldn't afford the train, and so he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna." He didn't storyboard it or anything. But the Mountie sequence in the middle is like peak studio filmmaking, like on the highest level, to be able to have the budget and be like, okay, and then just stage it from all these different levels. And it's obviously, De Palma is such a big sort of acolyte of Hitchcock, and North by Northwest is hugely important with some of those set pieces in both of those films. But that scene in general just feels like it could have been a scene in like North by Northwest or something, just because of the ingenuity of, like, there's 4 parts to it. I mean, I cribbed off of the De Palma style, the Hitchcock style. In the middle of Dig, there's an inspector sequence,
Yes.
where there's like 5 scenes going on, and I kind of keep up and up and up and up and up and I love those are my favorite. Those are my favorite sequences. I have a mystery comedy coming out later this year. Emil was in that too. I don't know if we announced it, but there's a sequence in the middle that is another one. I tend to find these moments in movies. I have it in Slayers too, where like I really believe that especially in a smaller film, pick 2 great set pieces and have one of them in the middle of the movie. My last thing, I just want to reference one movie with that. Attack the Block. The middle of the movie has this sequence on the bikes.
Yes.
Right.
Such a good sequence.
And it's such a good sequence. It's so funny because the rest of the movie doesn't really have a ton of stuff there at all. It's really just a lot of jokes and cool shit, and the directing is fantastic, the performances are great. But if you remember that movie, you really are just remembering that it's like a 10-minute sequence, and I think it ends in the garage, I believe. But it's that movie was obviously made for not a lot of money, and they were like, okay, we have money for one great set piece in this movie, and that set piece could be in Transformers for the scope of it. As far as it's so amazing.
They blew their whole wad on that, and it was worth every single penny, honestly.
100%. So I value set pieces in a way that I think sometimes filmmakers don't. Because I think that they're important, especially if you're doing films where there's a lot of performance around the action. And it's not just all right, people are going to talk for a little bit, then we're going to get back to action. If you have a movie where you have significant sort of suspense-driven scene work with performances, put 2-3 set pieces in there that rock, and everybody will be okay with it. You can be as sort of elevated as you want.
I think that's what you did here. Honestly, you did that. You elevated it with just those couple of set pieces that you put together. So yeah, the film is freaking awesome. It's an excellent film. It's really well done, man. And with that, I gotta let you go because they're yanking my chain here. They're
no problem. I know. I have a lot of other things. I know.
With that, yes. I'm gonna do an outro for you, and just say thank you so much, Asher, for being with us here and talking about your film. Yeah. We're excited for people to check this film out when it comes out. Why should people check it out when it does hit?
They don't make a lot of movies like this anymore, I guess. It might look like your usual action fare, but it's really an elevated drama with action elements, and there's some really great performances. I think that all 4 of them, I'd hate to point out one. All 4 of them are great. Emil obviously has the showiest, and so does Liana. But Thomas and Harlow are doing the type of work that actors understand as being really elevated. And I think this is probably one of the best performances I've ever seen Thomas do.
And that's saying something, honestly, because the man's prolific.
Something. But he really went into the darkness creatively to make it look the way it looks. It's very, very real. Emil is Emil. Here's the thing. I could say this is one of the best performances, but the guy's gotten so many good performances. So what am I going to say? And then the two girls are revelations. So, if you haven't seen either of them before, it's a great introduction. Obviously, Harlow, this is her first real movie, but Liana's been in a ton of stuff. She's a workahorse, but she's going to be in the new Scream too. But it's great to see her doing something a little different here.
Yeah, and that's what
Um,
I was gonna tell you. She's doing something so different, and I love that.
yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, hey, listen, let's talk again. I got another movie coming out next month with a vampire film, so we should try to figure out a way to
You
come back
send it
on.
to me,
Yep,
we'll put it out. You send it to
love
me, we'll
it.
put it
All
out.
right.
Have a great
Okay.
day, bud.
All
We'll
right.
see you next time.
Yep. Talk to you soon.